Oh, and now we're streaming. Fuck. Hi there, you're listening to Unnatural Selection, the show about newsy type stuff and things. My name is George.
My name is Tom.
My name is Adam.
And with our powers combined, we are Unnatural Selection. Make sure you visit us at our salubrious home on the web, unnaturalshow.com, where all difficulties are technical difficulties.
You'd honestly think we'd be good at this part by now.
It's not our fault, really. It's just that technology is bad.
How many middle-aged dudes does it take to screw a light bulb? Or
hey, are we middle-aged now?
I think we are.
Wait, rewind.
Yeah.
Forget everything about technical difficulties. You think we're middle-aged now?
I think we're over 30, so I mean,
I'm
basically
32-year-olds and a 30-year-old respectively, and we're middle-aged.
closer to being what do they call it, a middle-aged than I am to being an adolescent. So, yep.
Yeah.
Sit with it. Just let it mellow there, Tom. You know, just roll with it. Just sort of let it.
I think the point that will really fuck with me in that sort of sense will be when I've been an adult for longer than I was a child. Like, you know, first 18 years of your life or whatever before you considered an adult. So when I've been an adult for 18 years or more, then I'll be like, whoa, bro.
What's coming up, buddy? It's
bro,
like,
I know.
it's a couple of years.
Yeah, bro. 4 years from now.
And then that pop vinyl of a collection of yours will automatically just self-combust, I think, at that point. It'll just...
I think just my partner's sheer sexual interest in me will just disappear. Looking at that pop vinyl shelf.
It's a question of when does that go to storage and when does the IKEA furniture start popping up? And
we're currently storing them on IKEA furniture, so I feel we've kind of appeased both gods.
Yeah. Oh well, that's it. Yeah, the gods are smiling on you. Then you're all sweet.
See, and now the thing that I'll claim we've derailed this to be talking about my pop vinyl collection all of a sudden.
It's my fault. I did it.
Look, a guy I used to work with, he was also a big pop vinyl guy, but you know, he was older than me. I think he was in his late 30s when I worked with him. He had kids, wife, house, all that sort of stuff, but he had a huge pop vinyl collection. But I maintain he is worse with it than I am. Like we've just got our quirky feature shelf of just pop vinyls. He would not only have heaps of them and keep most of them still in their boxes, but he would also have protectors for those boxes, but would also, due to a lack of shelving space for the sheer number of pop vinyls he had, would rotate them out. He had like a museum, a revolving collection on display of like, oh no, that one's been on display for a while.
The curator of the pop vinyl collection would like to
rotating them out. And it was very funny because he was a lovely guy, but also his wife was really not into nerd shit, but he really was. I'm like, wow, this is such an odd couple scenario.
Yeah.
To the point where once I think he told me that she said, all right, all this gaming stuff, like Xbox controllers, games sort of sitting around near the TV cabinet, I don't want to see it anymore. I don't care where it lives, just that it's not in eyesight unless it's being used. I was like, oh, holy shit.
Funny
and then
story,
they went to IKEA.
They're divorced.
Not to my knowledge.
So why...
Love you, buddy.
Why?
Anyway.
So for those who don't know, pop vinyls are these like little character sort of figurines with the big heads, little toy figurines that you might see like Daenerys Targaryen at, you know, or, you know, like their pop culture, you know, little Darth Vader with a big bobble head kind of thing. What, I didn't intend for this to become an interrogation on your hobbies, Tom, but why is this? Why are you the way that you are?
I think it was like most addictions. I feel it was a slow gateway burn, right? Because I think I saw the little pop vinyls, and I'm like, oh man, you know, wow, there's heaps of those things. Would I want any of them? I'm not sure. Then I saw the little the Batman from Batman Arkham Knight, because he was like, he looked
Batman
all
was the gateway drug.
Tough and scary, but still in the bubbleheady sort of shape, but had the cool armor. And I'm like, that's a cool looking Batman. Oh yeah, I'd go that one if I found it. And so I found it, and then I was like, oh, it'd be cute to have a little Joker to match, right? It's Batman and Joker. Like, that's just the thing you gotta do. So, but I have to get the Arkham Joker, not just any, like, Jared Leto shit. No, I gotta get, like, the Arkham one. So I found that one as well. And, you know, then maybe I'd see one of like, oh, that one's kind of cute and buy that. But then also, as soon as people realize you like these things, gifts just like half our collection, I reckon, are gifts compared to like ones that we like went out and sourced. Because, you know, if you're doing like $20 Secret Santa or whatever, and you're like, oh, you like pop vinyls? Oh, sick, they're $20. I'll get him a pop vinyl. Cool. What's he into? Back to the Future? Done. Like, oh, I saw a Marty McFly. Perfect. It's
it's the Christmas present guilt.
Do you need to put these on a registry to make sure you don't get the same one? Have you gotten the same one multiple times? So it's like, oh no, Batman again.
That has happened with someone giving us one we already had. Thankfully, they had the receipt and stuff, so we just exchanged it in a store. I think the real thing will be if, God forbid, my partner and I split up, sorting out whose is whose.
I don't worry, Tom. I think you can keep him. I don't think Alice will be fighting you too.
Oh no, there's heaps of them that she loves. Like I, as a graduation present from her masters, I got her a pop vinyl of the cartoon character Super Chicken from the Hanna-Barbera cartoons. Which I barely know that well. But she talks, her and her family talk about Super Chicken all the time. So when I saw it, I was like, I'll get her a Super Chicken. Broke her brain. But the point is, she loves them as much as I do.
As time goes on, they become more valuable. No. So the longer, the hypothetical divorce of Tom and Alice, the longer that is, forestalled, then the greater the lawyer fees at the end of the.
All it tells me is that you guys are just perfect for each other, and you'll never split up. That's what that tells me.
That's ironically, yeah.
But no, I think Adam, you're right. My Demogorgon from Stranger Things that has its face closed up, unlike the picture on the box, so it's a variant, is still boxed up, and that's my housing deposit. God damn it! One day it'll pay off for me. One day.
Bernard Salt, who famously wrote the article saying millennials will never be able to afford to buy a house because they were buying too many avocados and toasts. Obviously, I had never seen pop vinyls. That's the new avocado toast situation.
Sorry, boys. In the instance of journalistic integrity and fact checking, I've just been informed by my partner who was overhearing taking a break from work that Super Chicken is not a Hanna-Barbera cartoon character. They are from the George of the Jungle cartoons from when she was little. So sorry, I retract my comment.
Okay.
From the 1960s. The 1960s. I'm getting even more fact checks. All right. I retract my statement. That information was factually inaccurate, and we at Unnatural Selection apologize for the error and print this said retraction. Thank you very much. Yep. That has been the pop vinyl section of this week's Unnatural Selection. Come back next week for more pop vinyl news, where we will talk about what is the most unhinged pop vinyl that we have ever seen. I would say the Chicken McNugget collection would be my vote. That and more next week.
Let's not open up that box.
What would that
Okay. We are, because we don't know when we started streaming, but we probably should clarify for any randoms that do happen to start clicking on this thing, by happenstance. We are a show about newsy.
I'm sorry.
Sorry. We are a show about newsy type stuff and things. Yes. This would be the and things part.
This is and things for sure. We are deep into and things right now. We are balls.
We probably should pivot
to
the newsy type stuff as well. But I'm going to segue that with a nice little question for you, and it's what does Scott Morrison like to collect? Do you think? You had to have a guess. Souls. Okay, we have one for souls. Tom.
Oh. So much coal. That's why he's naughty all year round. So when Santa turns up, he's just like, yearly delivery. And Scotty's like, thanks, Santa.
While I wonder if he's still got the laminated lump of coal.
Oh, sure he does. He's probably got it next to that boat statue of his, but it's just got a sign in it that says, I've kept this.
Ironically, that lump of coal, if it were to go to auction, would fetch somewhere between 400 and 500 pounds. So it's
especially the rarer it gets if we actually phase out fossil fuels. Maybe it's his house deposit. Maybe. I don't know. 8th house. I pulled that out of my ass. I assume Scotty has a zillion properties.
Nah, he's probably got like 2 or 3, but they're big ones. You know what I mean? Big ones for a big man who had a big conference this week over in Glasgow. Which happened to be about COP26, it was called, and we've been talking about it on the show for the last couple of weeks leading up to this conference, and that that basically it was getting pretty awkward because Australia didn't really have a climate policy to take to the climate conference. They kind of jerry-rigged one out of their ass in the week prior, after the Nationals gave some vague, unspecified promise to guarantee their souls or something to the Liberal Party. But
but the promise was based on no policies, it's not legislated, and nothing's different, and nothing's going to change. It's not going to cost anyone anything. So it's basically just the words
commitment,
net zero by 2050. How are you going to get to net zero? Not important. What's it going to cost?
No one knows.
Doesn't matter. What did you promise the Nationals in order to get there? Nobody knows.
Not
None
telling.
of your fucking business. Go fuck yourself.
But it is a shift, because previously they were what was it? We're aiming for net zero. Now we're definitely doing it. So they've committed to
a preference for net zero, and now they have a strong preference. So wow.
Is it a target?
No, it's not a target.
Be a target.
No, not a target. No. A Kmart?
It's a commitment.
A Kmart. Okay. I like that. That was good.
Boo.
Got to give that department store.
I don't like that.
A Target, some might say.
So anyway, so they've gone to COP26, and now this is a conference that obviously it was the G20 in Rome, and then COP26 in Glasgow. I was saying Glasgow last week, and my wife thought it was very funny.
I decided not to correct you because it was just hilarious.
Oh, whatever. What's Moet? Moe? I don't know.
Moet instead of Moe Shandon.
Just
whatever.
It's the one that's in Scotland. So Glasgow, they had the conference, and it's hard to overstate how much of a bumblefuck Scott Morrison is at these things.
He really nails the global stage. Nails it.
The man is a statesman. What can I say?
Yeah. For a former marketing man, he's very bad at compelling messaging.
PR, yeah. And you think that the climate change conference would be largely about Australia's complete failure in inaction on climate change, and maybe having to make some sort of commitments that might prevent the full 2 degrees warming that it looks like we're barreling towards. But
conference is still ongoing, by the way. They haven't agreed. They've sort of said, everyone made a bunch of speeches. No one really worked out the detail, and there's a bunch of bureaucrats left in Glasgow just sweating it out.
Yeah.
Hopefully something will happen.
Yeah. Anyway, there was a great little clip of Greta Thunberg out the front just being fuck these guys. Just whatever who cares whatever the fuck they're doing in there. These guys are not going to solve the problem. And they were fuck the, what was it? Fuck the, whatever it was. But
well, yeah, and her messaging's always been so strongly it's all just hot air. You're all just going blah 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 for the sake of a good speech, but you're not actually doing anything. Yeah. And it's consistently been proven right.
Anyway, so Scott Morrison deftly managed to avoid questions about his complete malfeasance and abnegation of total responsibility on climate change, and instead was able to direct global media attention to his ineptitude as a statesman in another area, which is the French submarine program. So the French came in red hot, and journalists were asking Emmanuel Macron, hey, do you reckon Scott Morrison lied to you?
Morrison. Yeah.
Do you trust Scott Morrison? And, do you reckon he lied to you? And to which Emmanuel Macron replied, I don't think, I know. And Scott Morrison was like, no, I didn't fucking lie to him. And I'm definitely a trustworthy participant in democracy. And to prove that, I'm going to release Emmanuel Macron's personal text messages in order to prove what a trustworthy, good faith partner I am in diplomacy.
So trustworthy.
Which some people have suggested aren't even real. But I don't know whether that's true.
God, that'd be even better.
But anyway.
In a sense, to show how trustworthy you are, not only the idea of leaking someone's personal text messages being untrustworthy, but to fabricate text messages to leak to show how trustworthy you are, despite the fact the very thing you're fabricating shows how untrustworthy you are. Like,
I'd assume that the text message is real, but there are some people that have, the French, I think, have actually said that, like, oh, that's not real. It's like, well,
I mean, Scott Morrison's like, it's definitely real. I fucking leaked it. It's unreal. So allegedly leaked, I should say, but like, who the fuck else would have access to Scott Morrison's fucking text messages? Like, it's just such a dumb, weird, bad faith fucking response. Like, I just can't fathom what would, like, I understand, like, if a foreign leader calls you a liar for lying to them, like, that's fair enough. But like, I understand the response might be to sort of hit back, right? Punch back.
yeah.
But why? Who? Like, was there anyone on the staff that was like, maybe we shouldn't release private text? Like, it just seems so obviously dumb and just terribly bad of an idea with an ally. I've never even heard of that. Like, what nation is going to engage with you in good faith correspondence again if, like,
nothing sensitive ever?
Right. Like, it just seems so ridiculous to be like, oh no, Australia's a good faith partner. By the way, here's all the text messages with Angela Merkel. She's a fucking piss up. Like,
to kind of be like, what? Have I like thrown a grenade into our diplomatic integrity? Well, I better chuck in some more.
Yeah.
Let's go out in a blaze of glory, really.
It was also at the G20 in Rome prior to COP26. It was a bit awkward as well because Biden sat down with Macron, he's pretty angry at the US as well, because obviously...
Well, is he actually angry, or is he... This is what one of these articles goes into, or is he sort of performatively angry to try and walk away with a bunch of concessions around this European army proposal that they're trying to put together? And, is he... so basically, Biden was like, oh, I had no idea that France hadn't been informed. And
I didn't know I was cheating on you. Like, I thought Australia was single. I thought they were so single.
She was texting me like, yes, Ross and Rachel. So Biden just like threw Morrison under the bus, saying like, I thought they'd been told. And Morrison was like, oh no, we did tell them that things were up. And this the content of this text message that we've been referring to was like Emmanuel Macron saying like, is
there anything I should know?
Is there anything I should know about the submarine deal? And Scott Morrison,
scene.
Like, then had scene missing, and then like a couple of days later, the submarine deal was cancelled. So it's like, it kind of proves Macron's point that like they weren't given a lot of warning and they were unaware as to the status of what the French submarine project was. And it's just like it's so
telling them like a week or a couple of days, and this was all known. Like they were told a couple of days beforehand, basically. Like, that's not telling them beforehand.
Yes,
that's not giving notice. I can't give notice to my landlord. I'm going to give 28 days or something ridiculous. You can't cancel a $90 billion submarine contract.
If I was quitting my job, I'd have to give 2 weeks minimum. But for a submarine contract, you could just go like, you could tell it wasn't going great, couldn't you? Like, apparently that's good enough. This is a contract that the Liberal government like created themselves within, like since they've been elected, whatever it was 2 terms ago. Like, it's not like there was a previous agreement like the East-West link where they got kind of like, it was a pre-existing thing and they got kind of shoehorned into it. It wasn't really there. Like, this was their own agreement that they've come in and blown up and then gone, geez, these French are really being little bitches about it, aren't they? You did all of this. You can't. You did this. This is
your fault.
This is your fault. It's such a like hilarious own goal. They just suck at it. They just suck. I know that every week I get in here, I get on the microphone, I go on and on about how Scott Morrison's terrible at his job. But in all fairness, it's as true, even more true today than it was last week or the week before. Like, they're just find new ways to be comically inept at grander and grander scales, at larger and larger price tags each and every time. Like,
did you see the news that came out? I think it was this week, actually. I'm going to throw this into the rundown just for shits and giggles because it's on topic. About the bushfire relief package.
Oh, this was so this is a tweet.
Yeah, Senate
that's
estimates.
Someone from the Labour side of politics.
I've watched the clip. I've watched the clip in Senate estimates.
No, but the reason it became a big deal all of a sudden is like I saw it on Twitter. It's one of those things you see on Twitter where I'm like, I'm gonna need to do some Googling before I retweet that because that sounds like that can't be true. But there's some X billion dollars worth of funding for this bushfire relief fund, $4 billion, and none of it's been received by the people who need it.
None of it's been paid out.
Yeah.
So they after the devastating bushfires through like late 2019, early 2020, where so much of Australia was decimated and people lost homes and there was like terrible bushfires.
A billion
and
native wildlife.
Yeah, and Scotty had fucked off to Hawaii and all that sort of stuff. Like that clusterfuck. Part of their like making good on it was to be like, oh, we've announced a $4 billion relief fund, which we now know has not been paid out. Like not a single cent of it
on time,
has
guys.
been paid out. And it's not
Nailed it. Like the response, they got forced handshakes out to the public from Scott Morrison faster than this relief money.
Yeah.
What a take.
As my brother pointed out as well when he talked about it, because he brought it to my attention, was like, he'd heard maybe that not all of it had gone to the victims. Hadn't realized that zero of it.
But is there a rollout plan, or is it just sitting in a bank account in someone's...
It is sitting in it's accruing interest for the government. So like I'm a bit hazy as to how kind of that works, but like essentially it's maybe, but it's accruing interest for the government. So it's accrued like,
so it was like
nearly
$4
billion of interest.
It was $4 billion, and now it's like $4.7 billion just because it's been sitting there in some fucking account. Like I saw this long Twitter thread where this journalist was going like through his, sort of like trying to do some public reporting as to where the fuck this money is and like where it's gone and what it's doing. And nobody really knows.
In Senate estimates, I forget the minister who's in charge of it, but she was being, asked by other senators doing all their like, accountability sort of checks on things, asking like, all right, so how much of this fund has been paid out? And one of the representatives was like, none of it, to my knowledge, or that sort of stuff. I was like, not a single cent's gone out. I was like, all right, how much interest is it accrued? And it's like 436 million or something like that. It's like, okay, so it's just accrued interest for the government. What has it done for the people affected? And the minister like started doing this long rambling thing of like, it was like probably trying to give out some sort of information like a rollout plan, like he suggested at him. But the senator was having none of it. He was just like, all right, I think he said at one point, he's like, all right, shall I just clock off? Like, I'll just like have a nap here in my chair and for 30 minutes and come back when you get to the point. Like, how much of it have you, like, what has it done for people affected? And they're like, well, the plan was to, and the blah, blah, blah. I was like, no, you have paid 0 cents. What has this fund done for like, he's just like, I want you to say it. And she was just like, you're being disrespectful. He's like, answer my goddamn question. And it's amazing. But yeah, they have paid 0 cents of that $4 billion announceable. Just like, how have we not reached the bottom of this government's barrel? You know what I mean? I keep feeling like we've gotten there.
It's the bottomless barrel, Tom.
The barrel is so much deeper.
There is no bottom. There is no bottom to the barrel.
It breaks my brain. Like,
don't worry, we'll just do a cabinet reshuffle and that'll fix everything.
Mm-hmm. We'll play some music.
Naturally. Every fucking time. So anyway, yeah, that $4 billion announceable just got them $500 million for shits and giggles that I'm sure they'll probably just spend, I don't know, on their re-election campaign. It's fucking abhorrent. And then also, on the topic of Scotty just throwing grenades into his diplomatic integrity, did you see the gaffe he made in his COP26 speech, where instead of saying climate change, he said China?
Climate China.
No, he said, like, and like something like, we must do everything we can to combat China. Climate change. And
Freudian slip much.
And
Jesus.
Chinese social media went bananas. Like, them all being like, well, clearly he's got China on the brain. Like, Australia wants to destroy China. I'm like, oh my God.
We'll do it with the Tomahawks that we're going to buy with nothing to launch them from. That's all good. Yeah.
And, like, never mind all of this, like, the actual practicality of the submarine program. Like, I know that's, like, it's not, like, neither here or there, because, like, likelihood is we're not going to get any of these fucking submarines by the time 2040 rolls around. But, like...
It'll be 2050.
We can't actually... Like, we don't have the capabilities to build them in Adelaide. It's going to take decades to build up the capabilities to actually be able to build and service the like, it's a highly specialized fucking thing.
Yep.
Like, I know that's besides
turns out
the
you can't
point.
just handle nuclear fuel rods for fun. Like, you don't pick them up with your
Turns
gloves.
out there's a couple of degrees involved with handling nuclear fuel, believe it or not. Like, it's just... And like, I trust the Morrison government to fuck up so hard that the climate change conference, the news about it wasn't about climate change. Like, just like greatest moral threat of our generation is secondary to Scott Morrison being a huge bumbling fucking goon. Like,
I mean, to be fair, this is like the Australian media. Like, the person that asked the question was Andrew Probyn from the ABC. I don't know whether or not what French reporting has been. I don't know what the US reporting has been.
Question asked of Macron.
Correct. Yeah. So, like, we're blowing it up here in Australia. I don't know whether or not around the world.
I mean,
obviously, it's damaging our credibility, but, like, I don't know whether or not Carol from Texas knows what's going on about, the submarine deal.
Okay, but, like, the reporting here in Australia should be about, here's what came out of the climate change conference. And I don't know if it's that not much was really achieved at the climate change conference, but I've seen things about, here are the big announcements from COP26. And here, you know what I mean? Like, it's...
Okay, galaxy brain conspiracy theory here. Maybe this bumbling grenade fire of destroying Australia's diplomatic standing was all a way to distract from Dan Ilich's mockery campaign. Let's get rid of all the coverage being about climate change by just, I don't know, shafting the French, and then no one will talk about how we've totally turbo-fucked the environment.
I mean... I don't know if Scott Morrison is playing, like, 12D chess as much as he is just, like, comically incompetent.
rolling from one crisis to the next.
Exactly.
It's not 12D
while cooking
chess.
a curry at the same time.
He's not playing 12D chess. He's more like just thinking he's playing 12D chess when really it's regular chess.
He's playing checkers, and everyone is checkmating him.
And your weird way of playing it is actually just really fucking up the game.
There were a couple of things that were sort of agreed on in principle by the leaders, which is basically that there would be a fund set up to help countries that are less developed to compensate them for the loss of financial
Wasn't this same in principle support also declared at the Paris conference several years ago, which never fucking materialized?
Probably. But no one's put a figure on what the actual number will be. It's up to the bureaucrats to work out a figure.
Good.
And
good.
India's like, we can't do 2050, but we'll definitely do 27 when it's 2070 when it's too late.
Nailed it. We absolutely nailed being definitely ready for it 20 to 30 years too late.
So I think we can call that one a success.
A roaring success.
Scotty gets back on the plane, cracks a cold one.
Nailed it. Nailed it, boys. Fucking nailed it.
We can just enjoy all the footage of him walking around COP26 like he is just the most unwanted turd at the party, like maskless while everyone else is in masks and congregating and talking while he's walking around being like, hey, can I be friends with you guys?
Hey guys. Yeah, he definitely, there's that clip of him looking like a fucking ham sandwich at a bar mitzvah. Like, no one wants an absolute bar of him. He's just just lumbering around like the fucking...
Anyway. And the other thing to think about...
He's the new Trump in that regard.
From a public world stage perspective, this is the, fourth... How many prime ministers we had in the last 10 years? Like, there's no...
6?
As far as every other leader in the room can see...
Speaking of former prime ministers, Malcolm Turnbull had his chance to stick the dagger in, which he obviously took. He was just like, oh yeah, Scott Morrison's a renowned liar. Holy shit. Imagine if anyone that you used to work with was just like, yeah, George? Yeah, he's a fucking piece of shit. Like, just publicly on television. Like, to all your mate, everyone you know has just seen fucking, Tom just be like, oh, George, who I dealt with for 10 years? He's a fucking cunt.
Oh, George. Oh, yeah, those rumors of him being a huge piece of shit are totally warranted.
Oh my God, Malcolm, so salty. Holy shit.
Yeah, I don't know if I was trying to work out who is more salty, whether it's Kevin Rudd or whether it's Malcolm. And I'm starting to think Malcolm is more salty than Kevin, which I didn't think was possible.
Kevin Rudd's he's from the opposite side of politics, so you expect him to be salty. Malcolm is just like, Malcolm, what are you doing? You're coming in just kicking shit over. Like, what? Who
with a leather jacket on?
Why was he okay? I mean, I'll take it anyway. So France got their concessions out of the US. That was the important thing, obviously. So Biden's now prepared to give conditional support to a European military force that complements NATO, and the US is also going to offer France counterterrorism assistance in West Africa. So they got their pound of flesh, which is, I guess, what they were there for. Yes, we've lost the submarine contract, which sucks, but if we play up how angry we are, we might be able to get some stuff out of the US. France is not a country you want to make an enemy of. They are the 7th largest economy in the world. Emmanuel Macron, by all rumors, is set to head up the European Union in future, which Australia is negotiating a free trade deal with currently. So good luck on that. And there was a quote from there was a statement that said, quote, "It is now up to the Australian government to propose tangible actions that embody the political will of Australia's highest authorities to redefine the basis of our bilateral relationship and continued joint action in the Indo-Pacific." So it's a statement from the Elysee Palace.
So what they're saying is if they want any help with China, you've got to fucking come begging.
So what do you want, France? And France says, what have you got? Turn out your pockets, bro.
Yeah.
Like, it's such a dumb enemy to make. It just makes no sense. Oh.
It's all good.
No, that's the guy who's in charge of our country.
Yep. Yeah, well, when Barnaby's not at the wheel.
It's all right. There'll be another prime minister in the next 3 years, and it could be from the same party, but there'll be another prime minister.
Yeah,
and then that next person can stand awkwardly at the schoolyard diplomatic table when no one knows his name.
There's a great article from Laura Tingle talking about this as well, the deeper analysis. And I love the way she describes Scott Morrison in the unkindest of terms. But the chief point of the article is that, so I'll just read the last bit of it. But somewhere along the way, that the idea that he and his government, Scott Morrison, should be judged in terms of how they are protecting the national interest rather than playing the political game seems to have been well and truly lost. Like, oh yeah, we forgot in amongst all of this, like, kind of laughing at Scott Morrison being a bumbling fuckwit. The like how the submarine program is handled and how we cooperate with other regions around Chinese containment. It's like yes, Scott Morrison is an obvious fucking goon, but it's a huge deal. Like, this Australian security, and we just that was not part of any of the analysis. It was all about dumb ScoMo and his stupid fucking text messages. Like, at no point do we actually consider
there's going to be
a
10-year period security. Now. There's going to be a 10-year period where we're not going to have really an effective submarine force.
Yeah, now, a quote capability gap, which is the nicest way of saying 10 years where we're basically fucked. If anything starts happening, we are fucked for 10
and that
years.
That is assuming that any potential conflict is delayed that long. There is a potential for, like, if Taiwan, something's going to happen with that in the next 5 to 10 years. So
between Taiwan and China, you're saying?
Correct. Yeah. So if somehow we don't all get sucked into the vortex of that, if we somehow manage to avoid that, then there will be that capability gap where we're going to be
China, could you just curb your rapid expansionist ideals? Just hold on to that till 2040, because we've got some submarines coming. So the Australian just hang on to that for just your nationalist ambitions to take over territory. You just hang on to that for like 20, 19 years. That'd be sweet. Thanks.
The Australian Strategic Policy Institute, which is basically government defense cumrag, but also does a lot of strategic thinking. just like choked on his.
Sorry, I nearly did a spit take all over my expensive monitor here. Yeah, sorry, it wasn't expensive.
Government funded cumrag, I should say. But anyway, look, they do a lot of thinking in this area, and they've basically said, like, we need to just stop thinking about the submarine project as like the linchpin to this. We need to start building ships now. We need to start getting things that can launch these missiles that we're buying. Like, there is a real problem where if we need to either project force or if we need to simply guard the laneways to Australia, this is just like worst case scenario, by the way. I'm not beating the drums of war, but hypothetically, if you were to say, okay, someone's going to attack us from the north, we haven't got
just a nameless country from the Indo-Pacific region.
We have no forward defense. The JSFs have got a range of less than 1,000 kilometers. The ships that we've got that can launch, anti-ship missiles, Joint Strike Fighter, they've got shit all range. The Tomahawks that we're buying are an old technology, and then they're also big, so you need like launch cells to be able to fire them. We've got a couple of ships with like 8 launch cells each, but like in the near future where hypersonic anti-ship missiles are going to be a thing, like you need like 50 launch cells or something like that.
We may as well be throwing actual Tomahawks, is what you're saying.
Like, we may as well just be
missiles.
Yeah. So we need to start building stuff. Like, if you want to jump into the whole defense industrial complex and you want to go down that road, where it is an arms race. If you want to jump into the arms race, we need to start doing that now.
Yeah, we are losing the arms race. We lost the arms race about 10 years ago.
Yeah. So anyway, our army has been beefed up, but the Navy and Air Force, it's not great.
We'll adopt the World War II plan that we had previously, which was abandon Darwin, fall south to Melbourne, let the desert take care of him.
Anyway, I'll stop rambling on about military policy, but no, it's not good.
It's good to get a bit of context. So staying here in Australia, for the only bit of good news that you're likely to hear all year, Cleo Smith, the 4-year-old girl who went missing a couple of weeks ago, who was abducted from a tent that she was staying in with her family, was recovered alive and safe and well, which was
that was good. I woke up to that news and was just like, that's incredible.
Right.
Yeah. It's fantastic.
I saw it and I was like, turns out it wasn't the dad after all. It was my immediate thought. Whenever a kid goes missing, I was like, it was the dad. I was very sure about it. I was just like, it's always the fucking dad. Just wait and see. And then I was just, oh, there you go. It wasn't the dad. Yeah, sorry guys. Obviously you love your kid lots. So she was found in the custody of a 36-year-old man who's since been arrested and charged. So she's home safe and well, and it was the good news story that everyone needed.
Oh yeah, because I don't know, as everyone knows morbidly, it's like once you're like several weeks.
It was
12
days
you're
or something.
Expecting either never found or not found alive, and all those kind of thoughts. So to the fact that she's not only alive but well and like in good health and spirits is fantastic.
Yeah, it was unexpected, right? Like, I'm sure everyone knows the chances of finding a missing kid after the first, sort of 48 hours, 72 hours drop pretty precipitously. And there was this massive sort of effort that was mobilized to try, people flying around drones, and, they were taking trash from all the surrounding area and like taking it back to Perth and sorting through every piece of trash for miles and miles to see if there was, maybe body parts or some sort of evidence or, anything. And there was this article. It was something that occurred to me during this process, seeing this huge national effort mobilized for trying to find this girl. It was just like, you wouldn't see that if it wasn't a cute little white blonde girl.
Cute little white girl, yeah.
You wouldn't see that.
Yeah.
And there's this article from Shahani Wellington, which basically talks about there's a bunch of people in the Indigenous community that go missing every year, and
we don't see this level of media attention.
We don't see, a dozen people going through trash trying to find a little Indigenous kid that we're missing. The Indigenous population makes up 3.3% of the Australian population, and yet they account for 20% of the missing persons cases. Like,
number again.
So 3.3
just for clarity,
3.3% of the total population are Indigenous here in Australia, and they make up almost 20% of missing children aged
20%. That's 1/5.
Yeah.
Of a population of what, 28 million, 26? What are we now? 28
something
million,
like that. Yeah.
That's a staggering figure.
Yeah, I knew
That
it was bad.
staggering.
Like I knew intellectual, I guess, sort of emotively, that was like, oh well, they wouldn't be mobilizing this kind of national effort if it was, if it wasn't a white girl, right? But I don't
Because
think yeah, like I think we all sort of are intrinsically aware of. But I don't know if that's like cops are racist and so they're not investigating people going missing. I don't think it's that, but I think it's like we as a country just care less about the lives of Indigenous people than we do about other people, right? Like,
and also like a media sort of thing as well, right? Because like, while like those cases would probably be investigated in some level by police, it'd be more that but it's not like a sexy, exciting story for the papers to be running, right? Like you won't, but when it's a little white blonde girl, it's like, this is such a huge event, and
I think it goes larger than just us. I think there's actually something in the Western zeitgeist about it. You look at things like John Benet Ramsey, the US. You look at Madeleine McCann. Yeah. Like, it's always a cute little white girl that's gone missing somewhere, or been, something's happened when it shouldn't have, and it seems to capture not just Australia's consciousness, but globally, in the Western zeitgeist, there is something about that. And I think, we've got to deal with our own problems here in Australia, but there's probably a larger question there about sort of, why do we do that? Like, as a sort of, I don't know, is it?
Well, it'll be like a societally conditioned bias, and
I think part of it is a bias
hundreds and thousands of years of racism and all that sort of stuff, like just inherently conditioned into us.
I think part of it is definitely like, you care about people who look more like you, and if you've got a society that is overwhelmingly white and middle class, that you feel that impact, much more directly, then it's like you see a kid walking down the street who's homeless or something like that here in Australia, and you think about that and you care about that more than like a homeless kid in Nairobi or something like that, because you can relate to that kid. It's much more immediate. It's here in front of your face. But like, and it's something that Peter Singer goes into pretty well in his book, The Life You Can Save, it's like, morally, there's no difference between those two people. Like, if you are, he uses the example of a guy who, if you're walking down the street and you see a kid drowning, you go, I've got a $500 pair of shoes. Would you go in and save the kid, even if, it would ruin your expensive leather shoes? And you go, yeah, of course you would. You'd be a monster if you didn't, right? But if you actually take that logic and extrapolate it out, it's like, well, surely we should be giving much more of our income. Maybe not everything we can, not every single dollar that we have, but like, surely we should be donating more than we do to help the plight of kids here and elsewhere, because their lives are just as meaningful as the ones that are close to us, right? There's no moral difference between those two things.
I think it's part of what Tom said. I think it's more to do with the news media. Like, I wouldn't have heard about this, nor would I have probably cared if it wasn't front page.
But the
Google
media
AdWords, just like.
But the news media is a mirror. They show us what we want to see, and if people are clicking on, like, if people weren't clicking on articles about Cleo Smith, then they wouldn't be showing them to us, right?
Yeah. So
they give us what we care about. I think it's much more, we the public determine our tastes a lot more than the media determines our tastes. They just show us
it's a chicken and the egg thing, right? Like, the reason that they think we want to see it is because we're clicking on it, but we're also clicking on it because there isn't the other stuff maybe to take us away from those clicks.
I wonder. I think we're just basic bitches. I think we like stories about fear and, like, reflecting people that look similar to us. Like, you know, The Conversation is publishing articles every day, like 4,000 word articles about climate change, but like people don't fucking click on it. Like, so
well, yeah,
think it
and I
goes back
saw
to-
the internet is big. There's other stuff out there.
Well, yeah, and I noticed it as well when like it goes the same for the good news. Like I remember, like even though it was fantastic news, it was that Cleo was found and was healthy and all that sort of stuff. I remember opening up the ABC News app just to read the news of the day, and the first 5 headlines to scroll through were all to do with it.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, like it's fantastic news, but we've also got COP26 is going on, and we've just spent a good chunk of this episode talking about what a big deal that was and all that sort of stuff. It's like, oh, but like, fuck, where's the stories about that buried further down? Because we need 5 different articles to click about how she was found, and like, it feels weird to kind of be bothered by that. But because it's such fantastic news, but it's
Great.
all like
It's obviously great that she was found.
you could have like this could just be one story, and I'll click it and I'll read it. But like all the headlines dominating the app today should not just be that.
Yeah,
but yeah,
I think there's also something as well. Like you think about like the fairy tale, you know, think of the princess in distress. Like there's, I don't know. I just think that there's something there that, like, you know, that's we're just so culturally indoctrinated with that now. It's like,
oh yeah,
I think we're just going to keep being fed that.
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
unless somehow, you know, we start to change the stories we tell on in a larger sense.
I don't know if you can make
good.
people care though. That's the thing. It's like I do think media has some taste making role to play. Like I think the stories they cover do influence to a certain degree the things that we are interested in and the things that we care about. But there are some things that the Australian public or a Western audience in general are not interested in. And we are not interested in little black girls going missing as much as we are little white girls. And that's just like, I think part of that is just personal bias, like, and just how we naturally sort of gravitate towards people that look like us. And I think part of that is just like sort of systemic, I don't know what you'd call it, except racism, bias against other cultures, other things, other people.
But I'd say there's also an element of, I think the media sort of plays a bigger role in it, in the sense that like there would be people who, because when you have that conscious thought, like we were discussing before, of the moral feelings that you have about the kid drowning in front of you compared to the kid drowning in elsewhere in the world, like that they're both exactly the same, that there would be people who do understand that psychological exercise, that they do have that thing of like, you know, that it shouldn't matter the race of the child. Like, you know, a child disappearing like is a huge deal and people should care about it. But because, like, you know, we didn't know about all those Indigenous kids missing because it's not reported. Like, there'd be people who would care who just don't know that it's happening because that information's not being presented to them unless they go look for it.
I think it's called relevancy bias. But it's like you're only aware of the stuff. You put a disproportionate weight on the things that you see come up more. So people think like, oh, kidnappings have gone up, but it's like, no, crime in general has gone way down over the last couple of decades. But because they see crime in the newspaper, they think crime's gone up because they see crime again and again.
I thought there's a thing with like sort of about Murdoch media, sort of about that, of like, well, you know, maybe crime's gone down, but the sheer amount of stories, I think they were comparing it with climate change and maybe like just crime. Like people think crime's rising because it's been reported so much, but if proportionally that amount of coverage was given to what climate scientists were saying, like really we should be seeing so many more articles about it. And I don't know, we're getting off topic, but it's very much there's no simple answer other than just systemic racism, because that system affects a lot of things, both us as individuals consuming media and then whether or not we devote any of our conscious time to either learning, caring, or doing anything about it, but then also that the system itself is not presenting the information to us for us to even begin that journey of that we're aware that like a non-white person's gone missing and to care about it and to do anything about it.
I think
funny.
It all compounds and like creates a fucking horrific system.
There's I watched, slight sidebar, but I watched Children of Men for the first time last night.
You haven't seen
Children of Men
how have I not seen this film? It's like the best film I've ever seen. Yeah. It's great.
And wait, George, shut up. You haven't seen Aliens. But Adam, you haven't seen Children of Men.
I've seen Children of Men, though. Which is relevant to this conversation.
Anyway, but the point is that whole movie opens up with, and it's about fertility and that kind of thing. But the whole movie opens where the main character walks into a cafe and everyone's just crying and they're glued to the screen because the youngest person in the world has died because they can't have babies anymore. And everyone's so fixated on that. And everyone's he walks out of the coffee store, everyone's still doing their thing. And then the coffee store blows up. Someone bombs the coffee store, but no one cares. No one's listening about the bombing. It's just like, oh, well, look, the youngest person in the world's died. Like I think it's to do with that relevancy bias
I just looked it up. It's called the availability bias. So a distortion that arises from the use of information which is most readily available rather than that which is necessarily most representative. So like you see stuff in the headlines and you think that's the biggest thing, that's the most important. But
what you remember.
What you remember is not necessarily a like studious breakdown of the facts, right? I think it's good that we're having these conversations. I think that is part of reversing this distortion, this media distortion, is to sort of point it out and say, hey, like it's great that Cleo Smith is alive, but also like, this Charlie boy Mullally, like also went missing in 2013. He was a 10-month-old Indigenous kid, and like no one gave a shit. There was no drones flying over the outback. There was no going through people's garbage. Like,
it's probably a good aspect. It's not just
pointing
public
out the double
attention.
standard.
It's also police resources as well.
Yes.
We're talking about here. Public taxpayers' money. I guess that's what it also comes down to. So there's more taxpayers' money being directed to this single missing person.
Well,
it looks like a task force of a couple hundred people, I think.
This is where like defunding the police can come into it, in the sense of like, while that phrase sort of trips in a lot of people the idea of giving the police less money, it was like more in the sense of, well, no, the police.
Fair enough. Like it's a fucking terrible title for the thing that it is.
But like so much that, well, the police, like all those police that are dealing with things that maybe social workers or like first respond, like health responders and all that sort of the mental health services and all those sorts of things should be responding to, then there are more resources for more like of a police effort for missing persons and all that sort of stuff as well. So I
don't even know if it's necessarily a case of the resources not being available. It's just like they haven't been deployed because nobody cares.
Because nobody cares. Yeah, that's what I was trying to say before. It's like there's no like one boogeyman just to point at to say, oh, well, this is what the problem is and we have to fix it. There's so many little things that make the huge issue of, systemic racism, bigotry, etc., etc., etc.
Well, it's funny you're talking about systemic racism and bigotry, Tom, because one of Australia's
biggest proponents of racism and bigotry.
No, he's telling the truth, George. He's a truth teller. For the battlers. Anyway, Alan Jones.
Alan Jones, you mean? Alan Joyce.
God
is
damn it,
the CEO of Qantas.
No, Alan Jones. Sorry.
Who, to my knowledge, has not stepped down or anything lately.
Alan Jones, Sky News commentator.
Bag extraordinaire.
And duffel bag of shit has been dumped from his primetime program on Sky News. So they got to the end of his contract and Sky News said, thanks for your many years of service, Alan Jones. Turns out you're a fucking horrible piece of shit. And
let's not give Sky News any credit.
Well, no, not because they expressed a moral position, but it was more like, hey, Alan Jones, you're affecting our bottom line with your constant coronavirus conspiracy theory nonsense horseshit. and you're becoming
hey,
a liability for us. So
yeah, the mastheads now need to pivot to maybe giving at least some minutiae of a shit about climate change to at least like work on this little hack. And so you're not gelling with that, Alan. Like, you know, like, yes, we have been staunchly against climate change for ages, but geez, the big man says we at least have to maybe do something about it.
We need to appear as though we're looking like we're doing something about it. Yes.
Yeah. And
so his contract has not been renewed. So they offered him
they offered him a streaming
role on some like dogshit streaming thing that they're trying to get started, and he said no thanks. So has decided to leave Sky News. So, but when someone's, you know, there's this Australian political outfit called the Witches, and they have been pretty vociferous in campaigning against Alan Jones, and people think that they are at least partially to be credited for his, him being sort of dumped. But I kind of feel like it's too late for all of that. Like he's had a broadcast job talking shit for decades. The man's 80. He's about to shuffle off this mortal coil in all likelihood at any moment. So it's like, okay, yes.
Damage is done.
The damage is done, right? Like
Cronulla happened. The
Cronulla riots, which he didn't. Well, let's just put it this way: it didn't help to calm down the anger during those race riots.
He incited it. He was like one of the primary causes.
He directly incited, racial violence, and it was also like being done for a bunch of unethical shit, you know, sort of cash for comment stuff that he didn't disclose, and, you know, basically, you know, spruiking products and was getting paid for it that he wasn't disclosing and all this sort of shit. Like he got away with it. Yes, we got him off the air at 80, but like he lived his whole life as a fucking millionaire. Like we now live in the world that Alan Jones has created for us, and he gets to shuffle off this mortal coil with a couple million in the bank. And the rest of us just like, I don't know. It's like it's good, but like,
I mean, yeah, better late than never.
Far too little, and wait, decades too late. Like, I don't know. What do you guys think?
Well, it's way too late it's way too late to solve the Alan Jones problem. But I suppose it's then like whether or not these are the small steps of progress to solve, like to prevent the next Alan Jones problem.
In an aside,
we're shifting away from these kinds of like nut bar commentators, then that's a good thing in terms of like future sort of stuff. But yeah, it's one of those. Yeah, we haven't like his damage has been done. Will this lead to a societal shift where we'll have fewer raging fuckheads? Like, in future. Possibly, but yeah, it's
in a completely unrelated note. Bloviating white middle-aged shitbag Piers Morgan did agree to some syndication deal with Sky News about 6 weeks ago. So they're like, okay, we've got the bloviating white fat dude market covered. Right. With Piers Morgan, so we don't need Alan Jones anymore. They've just replaced
everything I just said. Throw it in the bin. Yeah, all right. So they haven't. We haven't solved the Alan Jones problem, and we also haven't solved the future Alan Jones problem.
Yeah, they just got a younger Alan Jones.
Keep in mind that, you know, like at the end of the day, Sky News makes money off these conservative commentators. The thing with Alan Jones is, while his YouTube videos were pretty. They would pop up in my algorithm because they knew that I would click on them and watch the horse shit. At the end of the day, he wasn't.
Made you rage watch.
They did make me rage watch. They, in terms of the actual ratings, in terms of 8 p.m, I think on whatever his time slot was, he was actually not doing that well on the ratings.
Well, I mean, Sky News
and he also got banned
10% of the viewership in Australia at any given time, which is not great. Like they're behind all of the major networks. Like it's not a popular offering, but it's not about that, right? It's about engaging the far-right conservative ecosystem on YouTube and feeding that back into Fox News and stuff over in America. Like it's not about being popular in Australia, really. Like,
well, same with the Australian, right? Hasn't like the Australian newspaper just been totally...
The Australian hasn't turned a profit
financially just in the ass for ages, but that's not the point. It's not there to be successfal.
No, the point is to be a credible arm to the right-wing, ecosystem of the Murdoch media, right?
Yeah. And he did get banned on YouTube. short while ago. I think
But
that's
this is the
Mr.
point.
Jones.
The damage has been
And
done. Like all of
yeah,
your coronavirus misinformation, like, okay, you got banned 18 months into a pandemic, but the pandemic's more or less over now. Like, you know, we're approaching whatever it is, 80% vaccination here in Australia of adults. I won't say it's over, but it's becoming endemic. The point where we care day to day about the pandemic as the number one major news story that everything is connected to all day, every day, that point is now behind us, right? So it's becoming more of a fact of everyday life, right? So it's not over, but like the damage is done. Like the shit you talked about, the coronavirus, the misinformation, the conspiracy theories about masking, and like the information's out there. So like, great that you got banned 18 months in, but like
1,000 people rocked up at a protest the other day, and that was, I mean, I'm
they
sure
were
they would have
protesting
been
yesterday here in Melbourne.
Yesterday,
Like,
sorry.
What?
Yeah.
What?
Just go down to the
1,000 of
pub.
them.
Have you nothing better to do now? Like, we can go out now.
It's moved from a my freedoms rant. It's now a anti-vaccination rant. Like the anti-vaxxers are seizing every opportunity.
Yeah, and the life has been breathed into that community in no small part due to people like Alan Jones and Avi Yemeni and all these other sort of right-wing commentators that have,
grown to prominence.
Yeah.
Do you think that? Because I know Alan Jones, he's been doing this now.
It reminds me of Thanos, like going back to his planet, resting after a job well done. What's that quote? Where it's like, a grateful universe saying thank you for a job well done. It's like that. That's what it is.
The sun will set on a thankful universe or something.
Yeah. It's just Alan Jones instead of Thanos going like, my work here is done.
Done.
Do you think that because he's been doing that now, he's hit that job basically, whether it be on radio or TV for 30, 40 years?
Professional cunt.
Do you think that it is that he has gotten more extreme as the years have gone on, or do you think the Overton window of what is socially acceptable has shifted and left him outside of that framework? Or maybe a bit of both. Like, where do you think that sits? I'm curious about your thoughts.
No,
it depends whose Overton window you're looking
through. The Australian zeitgeist.
It's so funny that you say that, Tom, because that's the exact response I had. Was like, it depends. Like, to his supporters, like he's dragged them right. But I think probably the majority of Australians have stayed the same, if not drifted leftwards. So it's like.
I think he probably got more extreme. Like this whole COVID stuff. Like he's just old and like he wouldn't even half the stuff he would rant on about.
I don't know, but like remember the shit he was talking at the Cronulla riots? Like the shit that Pauline Hanson used to talk about Asians and Muslims. Like I don't think you could really get away with that stuff anymore.
No.
But for the contingent who they're speaking to, they're like, great, this is fine, cool and normal. We hate Asians, we hate Muslims, we hate whomever you tell us to hate. The immigrants that are coming to take our jobs, like for them, this has become increasingly normalized. But for everyone else, for the other 80, 90% of Australians, they're just kind of like, that's not normal. You can't say those things anymore. Like what?
The other thing, like you got to remember that when he got dumped from radio, part of the reason was that he was basically he told Scott Morrison that Jacinda Ardern should. Scott Morrison should shove a sock down Jacinda Ardern's throat. I think that was the final straw of his radio career.
Yeah,
and then
calling left, right, and center. Right?
And prior to that, it was the whole your father should have died of shame with Julia Gillard.
Yes.
And in both those instances, advertisers just started going, nope.
Well, that was the strategy.
Down to the money.
That was the strategy behind the Witches, this group on Twitter, was that, basically running campaigns to try and get advertisers to pull money away from Alan Jones by basically making his brand toxic. Like, and that's good. That's a good strategy.
Works.
But I mean, he's been talking shit his whole life. Like this, like the term shock jock is like, like I was kind of joking before when I said professional cunt, but that is kind of his job, is to be deliberately a shithead to get people, to
angry and feeling things.
Yeah, exactly. Get people annoyed and then calling in on the show and having arguments like that. That is ratings. That is the
it's the same with like
the business
Andrew
model.
Bolt.
of Fox News,
like Andrew Bolt or
yes.
whoever, right? Like you'll never see Andrew Bolt or Miranda Devine or someone like write an op-ed that's just like, oh yeah, how good's everything?
Yeah, everything's
It's like no, whatever's being talked about, they have to have the
hot take,
the divisive take on it to stir up.
Yeah, they're professional shit stirrers. That's the job.
Yeah. They're trolls.
Aren't we professional shit stirrers?
No, because we don't get paid.
Oh, right. Okay, good.
Yeah, we're amateur shit stirrers.
Amateur shit stirrers. Just to be real clear about
shit stirrers in waiting.
We'll gladly be hired and paid by anyone who wants us to stir their shit.
I am so happy to shill. Man, I'll shill for anything right now. I don't give a fuck.
Just as long as we declare it.
Yes, it needs to comport with all ethical guidelines. Just quick to finish off the show. Republican, so over to America. Republican Glenn Youngkin has won the Virginia governor's election, all the commentary around this is saying that it's really dire for the Democrats and it's really bad. Like, it's not good for them, but also, like, historically, so Virginia and New Jersey have off-year gubernatorial. I don't know why it's a gubernatorial as opposed to gubernatorial. Anyway, that's a weird thing. They have off-year gubernatorial elections. So what generally tends to happen is, like, a president is elected and then people use these gubernatorial elections in Virginia and New Jersey as a way of sort of reading the temperature of the electorate and to suggest that there might be it might be a way of taking the temperature as to what's going to happen in the midterms, right? So for every presidential, for every president all the way back to Reagan, president wins the election, Democrat wins, Republican wins in Virginia and New Jersey. Like, it's happened all the way for, 30, 40 years. It's been like that. So the fact that people think it's a really bad indication for Biden, like, but this is kind of what happens every time. Like, we saw it with Obama, like, they get elected, they lose the midterms next year and lose the House. Like, it's kind of the ebb and flow of things. So for him to only lose one of these two races, or the Democrats to lose only one of these two races, is
pretty good.
Well, it's less of a loss than everyone's making it out to be.
Like, that's better. Better than what would normally happen.
Everyone's crying Chicken Little. They're like, oh, the Democrats are going to get fucking slaughtered, and, like, this is a sign of things to come. And like, yes, they probably are going to get stooged at the midterms, but it's not quite as bad as everyone's making out. It's still bad. It's not good because they're not passing anything now. This infrastructure plan is still on the back burner, has been for several months. Adam, what are your thoughts on Glenn Youngkin? Do you have any thoughts on Glenn Youngkin?
I don't have any thoughts on Glenn Youngkin. I guess the question is really, there's a lot of news talk about the Biden agenda and, what this means for it. And I think it's probably more just the result will be that Biden will start to feel the pressure within his own party because you've still got Joe Manchin not agreeing to anything, where, there'll be less rope for Biden to dance around with.
Does one dance with rope?
I don't know what they do with rope. You get rope, and then you have to do something with it. I don't know.
Rope to dance with. I definitely. You're not mixing your metaphors at all. It makes perfect sense.
No, more rope to dance with. So he'll have less rope in that instance. So I guess the question is, will some of these grandiose policy ideas start to be reined in? And
the latest on this big reconciliation deal that was initially meant to be 3-point-something trillion and is now being negotiated down to 1.7 trillion. Massive provisions have been taken out, including, paid maternity leave, dental on Medicare. All these things that they promised and sort of took to the election have been sort of carved out of it to try and get something passed. And there's still not. Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema still aren't happy. And so nothing's kind of been done. But it's not looking great.
It's also one of those things where, like, I don't know. I mean, everyone frets about the midterms and what's going to happen there, but is it just a sort of an echo chamber where the same thing happens here in Australia? There's a by-election and oh God, there's a swing to the left of
everything's
3
everything's
points.
a bellwether of everything, and it's not necessarily.
It's like, no, because in 6 months the population have forgotten about whatever happened.
Yes.
6 months ago, and then there's a fresh thing that they're worried about. It's whatever's right in front of them at that particular point in time. Scott Morrison still may win the election here in Australia because people aren't going to remember COP26 in 3 or 4 months when there's an election. So,
I mean, I remember when when he said, in relation to the bushfires, he said, "Oh, I don't hold a hose, mate." Everyone was like, "That's it. Scott Morrison's done. He's cooked. Absolutely fucked it. No, there's no way." And then everyone's just people forget about it, right? Like as you say,
I just think
very short memories.
The big take home really is just that I think it puts extra pressure on Biden to, to work within the means of his own party rather than trying to be as progressive as perhaps Sanders and a few other people within the movement want him to be.
It's really the solution. This calls back, I suppose, to something that we've well and truly moved past. But in terms of ropes and dancing, really, I think Biden's solution should be to bring Andrew Denton onto his campaign, because then he would have enough rope.
There's an old Australian media reference that is so old.
It's anyone's going to get that
20 years old.
I've been trying to get that in for so long.
So there was a television interview program
once
upon a time.
Just let people look it up.
Called Enough Rope. On that note, we have been, we are, we always will be Unnatural Selection. Make sure you visit us at our celebrities home on the web, unnaturalshow.com, for more quality gags like that. Make sure you follow us on all the bullshit social medias that have, do, or ever will exist at Unnatural Show. That's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and motherfucking YouTube. Make sure you follow me on Instagram and Twitter at George Tsipos.
You can follow me on Twitter at Tom D. Heath.
You can follow me on Instagram at AC Doreen.
You can follow us down to the ABC iView archives to watch Enough Rope with Andrew Denton, quality interview program from the early 2000s. Thanks for listening, guys. Love your faces. We'll see you next week.
Fuck you guys. That joke was great.
I'll give him a 7.